and welcome to the class today. We're going to be talking about musicality, and the person that we have that is our expert on musicality is Erik. And some of you may not know this, but I met Erik many years ago at another studio, and also was able to go see him where he used to work at a piano store, and he's quite the musician, if you aren't aware. So he's going to be the expert talking to us today about musicality. And so Erik, we're excited to have you do this.
Yeah,
And he prepared boards for us with the sparkles, so he's got the whole theme still going. We're doing good. We're doing good. So why don't you start with just a definition of musicality and dancing?
I think the best way to describe musicality and dancing is really how it is that we would portray the music, how it is that we would draw the music, interpret it. There are certain sounds that are embedded in the music that trigger an emotional response. They take us back in our memory sometimes, or they get us excited about a certain, the drama is happening, or this is my favorite part of the song. So there's always lots of activity that happens to inspire us, and the best way that we can kind of do that whole musicality thing is really what it means to us.
Right, and you've got some notes back here on interpretation of sound, highlights, accents, emotions in relation to sound. So I think that's a really good definition because it is what inspires you. I know like samba always gets me really ready to dance, whereas waltz also inspires me to dance, but from a very different emotional place. So
Sure.
Everything speaks to us very, very differently, and very uniquely.
Yeah.
All right, so let's kind of dive in. So how does musicality stand to benefit us? In other words, why would it be important for us as dancers to understand musicality?
I think that the thing that inspired all of us when we first watched really good dancers was that there was something magical about the connection between the partners. There was animation, there was a story happening, and those of us who have been studying for a long time, we know that there's a regimented timing. Like in waltz, there's that definite 1, 2, 3, but what we find so magical about some of those couples that we watch on the competition floor is that they're hanging on to the very last second of that beat, and it's not quite so regimented. So there's a lot of creativity going on in that piece of it, and I think that's really what inspires a lot of us. It just is to kind of stretch those boundaries.
So kind of like if you see that waltz and it looks like that couple is just hovering, that ability to interpret that note and just hover until the last second where they then would move out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it much more enriching as an experience when you're engaged in that, but we're also inspired by seeing it.
Yeah.
So I think that it's something that definitely is rewarding for the couple as well as the audience. It makes it much more enjoyable.
And I know for me personally, growing up dancing, when I would see really good dancers, when I would see that kind of musicality, it made me want to feel that experience. I was like, oh, that looks so amazing. That looks like it feels so good. And so it was what really drew me to go, I want to be able to do that.
Yes, it's true.
But a lot of that is that interpretation of music and how to draw out those beats, or to be really precise and sharp with them with your body, depending on what you're dancing to and what you're accenting. Okay, is there anything else we need to add there? I know you had made some other notes here about, I believe it was this sheet here, the importance of musicality. I didn't know if you want to speak to some of those things.
Well, I think that, how many times have you said to your instructor, this would be so much easier if we could do it with the music? I'm a big proponent, of that argument, because I think what happens when we put the music on, there's so much brain activity that goes on, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But what I like to tell my students is that when so much of the brain is engaged, it's soothing for one. If you're really enjoying the music, it's soothing, and it takes you out of your thinking, calculating type brain and puts you more into that momentum, movement type brain where really I believe miracles happen. Sometimes things just organically come to life and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that turn. I was enjoying the music so much that I wasn't thinking so much, about it. So.
And what I would describe that as from my work is that you get people into the present moment. And when we get into the present and we're not worried about the past, if we ever did it wrong, or if we're worried about if we're going to do it right in the future, then you're in what we call that creative flow. And that's where, when you say the miracles happen, it's because we're allowing ourselves to be creative in the moment without worrying about past or future. And so things become very possible in that space. Stuff that we might have labeled as impossible or difficult, or I don't know if I could ever do that, suddenly that goes away and everything becomes possible because we're in that current moment. So very powerful. Okay.
So what I like to say is the importance of musicality is that, the same steps take on a new life. before too long. It becomes like fresh data to the brain. If we've done these steps over and over again, if there's something in the music that really inspires us to be light and airy or very, sharp and dramatic, it starts to give us what scientists refer to as a new language for the brain. It helps to enrich your movement vocabulary. You start to discover your own phrasing and dynamics within the context of that choreography, and it just becomes that much more enjoyable for you.
And I think this is a great way too to, sometimes people think that practicing the same step feels boring. But if you take that step and you apply it to different pieces of music, that step can become very interesting again because it can be interpreted so differently each time.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Some people will ask me, is timing the same as musicality? And what I like to suggest to them is that one usually will serve the other. If we have a good sense of timing, that makes us feel a lot more comfortable. And when we're comfortable, we can explore musicality. But I think also it works in reverse. The more musical that we can become, it helps us pay more attention to our timing. Waltz timing would be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, whereas mambo would be 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. So those are two different examples of timing, but there's personality involved in both of those examples that again make that experience much more engaging.
So would you say that timing versus musicality, another way to say that might be timing is about the beats, but musicality is about what's happening in between the beats?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's what Stefan always likes to say, is that dancing is what happens in between the steps, and the music is really what happens in between the notes, so that the two work very well together.
So understanding that space between 1 and 2 or 2 and 4, is really important, because there's where you use that body, and you can really start to explore how we can dance the body in between the beats.
True. And what I like to tell people is there's no right or wrong way, really. When it comes to musicality, there's no correct way and incorrect way. What I like to suggest is work with your instructors, work with your coaches to really start to explore some of those places where you can become your dynamic best, where it is you can really hang on to that phrasing and really express before we're hanging on so much that we start to get behind the time. We don't want to go across that line necessarily, but what I find a lot of times the coaches will do with you is help you really examine those places where you can bring that creativity to the surface and really become that couple that the judges just, I can't take my eyes off them.
Right. They really capture your attention.
Correct.
Because you want to see how they're going to move that, through that piece of music.
True.
Right. Okay, anything else with the importance of musicality you want to touch on here?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay.
It's important for the individuals as well as people who are watching, because that's really what inspired all of us, I think, when we first started.
Absolutely, and I think another point you brought out is practicing with your teachers. I think sometimes we all get afraid to be that vulnerable, to really explore, like, well, what does this really make me feel like doing or moving? We try to get to the step and manage and memorize the step, versus that creativity comes in. How do I want to interpret this movement? And there's where the musicality can really be played with, but you got to be vulnerable there too. That's where that creativity comes in. And so talk to your coaches about that, and to your teachers, because they can help you get into a space where it's safe to explore that and what it feels like to you and how you would want to interpret that movement. Because then I think that's where you start to take more ownership, and you start to really take ownership of your own dancing more, versus just trying to memorize steps and what people have told you.
If for a moment I can go there in that direction. You guys have been working so much on connection, and the importance of that. And we always talk about tone in the body, for the benefit of the partnership, and that it looks so much better. But also, there is a little unspoken communication happening, a little bit of a telepathy happening. And when you maintain tone in the body, that's the best opportunity for you to convey those feelings, to convey that energy from the leader's side into the follower's side. She receives that, and they both carry on. And it's really a great thing. And so maintaining tone in the body allows for that transfer of signal and emotion and feeling. And it's I think one of the things that really hooks us. It keeps us going.
I agree. That's so true. Okay, well, you're about to get into even more of what I love.
This is the fun part.
So what is it about the music that inspires us to get up and move?
Okay, so I went and did a lot of research on this over the past week when I knew that I was going to be doing this. And so there's going to be some language, obviously, that you know very well.
Right.
So I found in an article published by Smithsonian Magazine that the brain is inherently capable of capturing patterns that repeat. Like almost instantly we can find patterns. and that the brain is engaged in so many different areas, in areas that involve, you know, muscular, auditory, visual, linguistic, and memory. All these neurons are beginning to fire in multiple regions. So within, you know, seconds of each other is really where all this engagement seems to happen. And I just thought that was fascinating.
It is, and something just to add on, because of understanding the brain and studying it like I do, one of the things that allows us to become in the present moment is when we can turn off all that background stuff that's happening in the brain and we become focused on one thing. And so I think one of the things the brain, when it hears a beat, when it hears something that captures it and we really get into it, it allows those other parts of the brain to quiet so that you can truly be focused on what you're doing. And that's where we have those moments where time seems like, you know, you might have been doing something for an hour and it seems like it's 5 minutes, because everything just goes into the background and you become very present with what you're doing, and it feels so in flow and so easy and so smooth because we're not managing all this background stuff, and music has that ability to do that, as does dance.
Sure.
Any of these performance activities.
I had some notes on, let's see, where is it? This guy here?
Might be the next one. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good. So we're getting into, this was the under the hood stuff, and as soon as I dug this stuff up, I was like, oh, Traci's gonna be so proud. All right, so we have our cerebellum. This is our, by definition,
this is part of the lower brain, and it's, you know, really when they talk about the original brain, it's what's managing a lot of our systems unconsciously. It just helps a lot of things keep breathing, heart rate, all that stuff. It's just doing it without us thinking about it.
So the cerebellum has connection to the, I hope I'm saying this correctly, the amygdala?
Amygdala.
Amygdala.
Yes, amygdala.
It was one of those Star Wars characters, I wasn't quite sure. All right, so this is our emotional center. All right, so this is our emotional center, our planning and our impulse control. Stefan is dying back there. Whoa, Elizabeth. Okay, edit.
Edit it out, edit. There we go.
All right, so, and in so doing, the mesolimbic system really is responsible for things like arousal and pleasure. We smell something really good coming from the kitchen, we know that meal is gonna be great. It is also responsible for the transmission of the neurotransmitter dopamine, that good, feel-good chemical, you know, in the bloodstream. And what I discovered was that this endorphin rush or dopamine rush can be anticipatory. There are some portions of the brain that will, you know, trigger that response sometimes, you know, 15 seconds before it hits. And so I have kind of a fun little illustration about that. Like, you all know, oh, this is my favorite part of the song, don't turn it off. So, you know, it's party time on Thursday night, you know. You know that the lights are starting to lower, and I know any moment now, this big old fat note is gonna come out into the chorus. I can imagine the lights going, and it's party time. Woo! You know, right? Okay. You know that, right? It's all a trigger, right? So the same is true about any type of music. The same is true about, you know, waltz music or tango. It's really how it is that it grabs you, and you really want to again explore those options to express and emote. It becomes dynamically more interesting than just, you know, counting, you know, the beats and that sort of thing. Yes. Now I will tell you, if I may, the reverse is true. Okay. One of the ways that he loves to get me is he knows that I'm about to get into my groove. Anyone of you been on a lesson with me? We're doing hustle, and he's close to the music, and he knows that hook is going to come in, and he likes to go, and you're like, ugh. You know, that energy has to go somewhere, right?
Yes,
and so my hope is that, you know, you all will start to plant that energy into what it is that you know is coming up, even if you haven't heard the music before. You know, you're out on the competition floor and you know it's a waltz, or you know it's a tango. And that's what levels the playing field. Nobody has, sometimes we heard it, sometimes we haven't. We have to dance as though we've heard it a million times. You know,
right?
And you know,
that's
and
so
it's really that's the whole thing that again calms your nerves, and it really makes you look like you're, you know what you're doing out there.
Right. And you know what you were talking about there with triggers and the emotions, and then being anticipatory. Emotions are just chemical recipes, right? So if we pull a file in that amygdala, which is our emotional center, and it recalls that, okay, this piece of music is coming up that I really love, you are correct. It will start to release the dopamine prior to the actual music being played, because it's anticipating that, okay, this is one of the things I really love, and when I hear this, it just fires me up. And so it's the body's getting ready for that. And it will do the same if you have a downer. It's like, okay, this is coming, and it'll produce chemicals that bring us more down. But it does record and remember. And sometimes that works in our favor, and sometimes it doesn't, depending on what we're working on.
Yeah, it's true. So I have another example of two different types of waltz music. For a moment, we could talk about the quality of the two different examples and how it is that we might express, in movement quality. So I'm going to fast forward.
Okay.
Let's see if I can do this now. All right, so here we are. We've got some music from Secret Garden. Which is again the butterfly one that we have, in the, nice and slow 3, which Randy loves. The slowest waltz you can get. Randy loves the slower the better. So you hear this melody line is always falling down. Da, da, a little bit of a rise and then come on back down. So it repeats. Da, 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 da. So we really have a lot of big flowy type movement, lots of breath, lots of suspension between the partners, and you can really get lost in the moment here and just hang on to the last second. It's great, right? All right.
It really is.
Now, different style of waltz altogether. I will go to, all right. So this is a little bit quicker in tempo, but we have that piano riff down at the bass line. So to me, this kind of sounds a little bit more like country music.
Country music, first thing I thought of.
Yeah.
Yes.
And country music has, a little bit more of a down-to-earth feeling.
Yes.
So the expression between the partners can be considerably more centrally focused.
Right.
The stopping places and the pauses, and maybe not quite so light in areas, the example that we just heard.
Right.
And before you know it, you're zoomed in on that couple because they're relating to each other so intimately because of this type of music background. Very, very different, but they're both in waltz.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we
yeah,
can really
absolutely.
explore.
The first one has more of, like you said, like a fairy tale, ethereal, very spiritual quality to it in your movement, soft, whereas this one is more of a, to me, like you said, grounded in a couple and a story between two people, more visceral that way.
True.
But it's amazing how just both are waltzes, but both make you feel and want to emote very differently in the movement.
Yeah, and that's really where the joy factor is, as far as I'm concerned, is really when you get to kind of break those shackles off and really, again, begin to express this. Once you start to do this, once you work with, someone intently on this sort of thing, and you would be, a subject matter expert on this, is that you really begin to imprint that feeling. And if that feeling is accessible, once you have it and you've learned it, you're like, oh!
Right, you can access it from, and you can use it in other places. So sometimes if I've got people that they're trying to overcome a fear of, let's say, public speaking. And I'll ask them, when was a time you felt very confident in doing anything, right? And then we start to take that feeling of confidence in that situation and we begin to bring it into the idea, the concept of public speaking. And so we begin to overlay it and train their brain to go, okay, I'm going to associate this action with the feeling of confidence versus the feeling of nerves. Yeah. So it's a process, but the brain can find those times and marry them together and build that up. Absolutely.
All right.
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah, some good stuff.
Yeah. Okay, is there anything else we need to touch on here?
No, I did my little importance of, and why it is that it's really important to use the music and let it move you, explore those places, and I did my little illustration with Juancito.
Oh, right.
So all of that's good. The one piece that I do want to close with is where can we find great pieces of music? We've got so much downtime these days, and things have changed so much in technology, these days, where music is, we used to have to go to the record store, and
absolutely.
go through
all the albums
records.
and find the ones you wanted.
So now, of course, we have streaming music services. YouTube is a phenomenal resource for music choices. Spotify, Pandora, Slacker Radio. And the nice thing about the streaming services is that they pretty much customize your particular tastes. And if you want to research any type of style of music, like let's say I wanted to research, Latin music, I would probably type in Carlos Antonio Jobim, who did, The Girl from Ipanema, anything, and then they start to build on those choices, and they send you other, like Jose Feliciano, they send you all sorts of different artists within that,
realm.
spectrum.
Okay.
Diana Krall, phenomenal, jazz singer. She does a lot of foxtrot type things, in swing, along with Harry Connick Jr. and things of that nature. So once you start typing in your preferences to any of these streaming services, they will come up with those customers who bought this one also like this. So it makes it so much easier.
Can expand your library very quickly.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So.
And something else you said that I was just gonna tap on top of there is exploring different kinds of music that maybe you would go, oh, I would love to dance this, but I don't feel comfortable or confident dancing to that kind. Maybe it's sexy, maybe it's flirty, maybe it's sad, maybe it's really dynamic, but you kind of think, well, that's not my personality and I don't know that I could do that. That's a great way to get out of your comfort zone and to really work with your teacher or work with your coach to explore that other part of your personality and develop it, because you can create that. It's just a matter of saying, hey, you know what, I always do, maybe I feel more comfortable doing these dances and staying with this kind of thing, but I really want to get outside my box and I want to do something different that I wouldn't normally do, and it is going to be a little scary and it will make me feel uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. It's a good way to expand yourself, and music can really be helpful in doing that.
It's true. I think the experience and the reward that you get from coming through something like that is literally life-changing. Dare yourself to put yourself in that place of vulnerability. That's really where the learning happens, and once those maps are imprinted, there isn't anybody or an experience that really can take that away from you.
That is so true.
Yeah.
That is so true. All right, Erik, this was fantastic. And again, for all of you guys, just know Erik has got so much knowledge and information on musicality, on understanding music, and can be just a vital resource too on different kinds of music, as he was just talking about. So if you're ever looking for something or want some ideas, he might be a good resource to tap that way too, to recommend different pieces of music or different artists that you might be interested in for certain styles. So this was fabulous, loved it.
I really
and
enjoyed it.
hope you guys enjoyed it too.
See ya.
Bye-bye.